Hi, I'm Suki. Welcome to Getting Psychic, where you can listen to me use myself to test the theory that anyone can get psychic. Hello and welcome to Getting Psychic. I'm your host, Suki, and I'm here today with Nicteha Cohen, a designer, artist, and somatic body worker whose work explores the deep relationship between space, body, and belonging. Raised by nomadic parents, Nicteha's lifelong search for home became both personal and professional. After a long health battle forced her to stay still, she began transforming her small space into what she now calls the Somatic Home, a living, breathing reflection of the nervous system. She's the co-owner of the Somatic Home alongside her partner, Jessica Forman, and she brings over 35 years of experience in design, somatics, and ritual to the work of making home a place of true healing. Nicteha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Nicteha and I met at a training for an energy work modality, Source Point, that we both practice. It was pretty cool.
It was cool.
So let's start from the beginning. Will you please describe your early years and your upbringing?
Oof. Yeah, it's a big question, right?
I know. Let's just dive right in.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was raised by what people would call hippie parents, although they were actually just slightly older than that. So my dad was really more of a bohemian.
Mm-hmm.
They ran around with a lot of artists and fairly famous people, musicians and filmmakers and such, mostly in New York City in the 60s. I was born in 1972, and we were basically gypsies. We moved around a lot. My dad was a free thinker, did not believe in school, did not believe in any kind of organized religion, politics, or anything else. So he's always on the fringe. And I grew up in a lot of different places, somewhat out in a hippie commune in southern Colorado, Santa Fe, New Mexico, New York City, Miami, Florida. Sometimes suddenly we would pick up and go to Hawaii for 6 months or Jamaica for 6 months. So I was really kind of all over the place. And in my view, it was not a romantic situation. A lot of people I come across, when I tell them I had somewhat of a hippie upbringing, they think that's super cool. And while there were some good things in there, it really disrupted my nervous system. It disrupted my health. I could go into a lot of the different trauma patterns and some of the terminology for that, but really it was a very difficult upbringing for me and my little
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was part of what made it difficult the sense that you didn't have a home?
Yes, absolutely. There wasn't a regular home and there weren't regular routines. There weren't regular structures. I didn't have a bedtime. I didn't have the morning, evening time to brush your teeth, time to sit down to breakfast. We didn't sit at a table for meals. Um, we didn't have meal times. We ate when the food was there. Um, Again, it came from this half baked philosophy that everything should just be free form and that structure is inhibiting a sense of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So there might have been some good intention to it after many years of study and many years of my own therapy to find some sense of stability. I feel like that's completely wrong. It's a really wrong approach. I still see people raising their kids that way, and it makes me cringe. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
there was definitely a lack of a regular sense of home.
Yeah. What are your parents around now?
No, my dad died about 7 years ago. My mom
Okay.
is around, but she has dementia, so she's not really around.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Let's talk about, because you know where we are, the role of non physical reality in that upbringing. I know that your parents didn't engage in any type of structure or organized religion, but it seems to me that living amongst certain fringe groups and outliers of society might have exposed you to certain spiritual practices. Is that the case?
That's definitely true. I feel like I was exposed to a lot more than most people as a
Mm-hmm.
child, and I did interface with a huge amount of different spiritual practice. A lot of people who were deep into meditation. A lot of this was brought on by drugs. So, just this kind of
Mm-hmm.
expanded consciousness approach of those years. And I did also, I mean, I've always been an extremely sensitive person. So, I was deeply connected with with land and with earth, with the environment. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember specifically seeing unseen beings, fairies or elves, but I had a distinct sense of aliveness and sentience from the earth around me and felt
Mm-hmm.
very connected to certain aspen trees and to certain places on the creek that we often lived by in the summer. And yeah, wherever we were, I would find a place in nature that was my home spot, that was my little safe nook, and it was more than the physical qualities of it. I was sensing a life force. I was sensing friendliness, actually, I think. And when I look back
Mm-hmm.
now, I really feel that it was the land that kind of saved my life because
Yeah.
the level of trauma that was in the field constantly, sometimes I'm surprised that I'm as functional as I am, which isn't like perfectly functional by far, but I owe a lot of that to the earth and that we did generally live in beautiful places that were in nature, often like very, very isolated. So I did have that influence of the natural world and all of the energies that are encompassed within that.
Yeah. I feel like this is an example of an exposure to early age to the spiritual concepts that, although being saved by the earth is beautiful and enriching, I get the impression that your exposure to non-physical reality wasn't positive.
I feel like it was a mixed bag.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about that. It's not like spirituality equals good.
I think that's a really, really important point. Yeah, I would love to talk more about that.
Well, how did that manifest for you?
I think on a number of different levels. One, because I was in the field, and of course, it depends on your viewpoint. If you believe in field theory and the morphic field in a sense that things are hanging out that are unseen, I do because I experience that directly. Um, I was exposed to so many people taking a lot of mind altering drugs from the time I was a baby until I was a teenager. And I started taking drugs when I was quite young. It was just around me. So with my developing brain, both having that just around, my father was a constant pot smoker, so I was kind of always exposed to marijuana smoke and people who were high, people who had extreme lack of boundaries on many, many levels. So on that level, it was just in me. It came into my cells, it came into my developing structures, and that has an effect that is not positive, which somewhat divergent conversation is why I have mixed opinions about the psychedelic movement right now and psychedelic therapy, because I was
Yeah,
exposed to so much of it from a young age. I know what it can do when it's not being integrated. Another piece of that is that I was always in fairly new age, alternative thinking groups of people, whether it was a hippie
mhm,
commune or growing up in Santa Fe, where we were surrounded by artists and people who were on the fringe, which is great. I'm totally down with open mind and exploration and interonauting, going digging deep into what is making up reality and what the true life is. But there was an incredible lack of attunement to the kids. I grew up with a lot of kids who I still know, and we all were kind of in the same boat, and we've all struggled through our entire lives. I'm 53, and I'm like just trying to figure out still how to have a sense of ground, how to have a sense of stability in my own system. And the other piece is there were a lot of frauds. I feel like there were so many people who bypassed actual emotional processing and had a lot of ego. So there was this huge spiritual ego that just infused, and like what the effect that had on me is, how can you trust anybody? Like, how can you trust if this person has a true spirituality to impart or not? And for the most part, I found almost nobody did. Really, like, for the most part, it was bullshit. For the most part, they believed it themselves, but it was really coming from ego. And that made me completely shut down my natural capacities for intuition and my natural draw towards healing, which was actually really, really strong when I was young. And but my interface with that made me want to vomit. So I turned against it pretty strongly.
Yep.
Does that answer the
I
question?
Yeah, absolutely. I just could talk about it all day though. Like I'm familiar with the phenomenon of like I wasn't personally exposed to spiritual concepts or psychedelics at an early age, but I know people who were, and same vibe, just like it's so off-putting to them. So, I mean, I met you in an energy work class, so you have found your you're starting at least to find your place or your footing or how you tie these realities together. Can you talk a little bit about that path? And again, I think that it is critical here to talk about when spirituality and spiritual people suck.
Yes.
Like I do. No group of people or people who believe a certain concept are innately good. So there's so much discernment
Yeah.
that needs to be exercised.
Yeah.
So how did you?
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective. And it's relieving and liberating to be able to talk about it freely, because it tends to be a taboo subject in a lot of circles. Like, you can't really go against the dogma. And the more new age and alternative stuff, I really find to be as much of a religious dogma as any other organized religion. And I've had to slowly decondition myself from that sense of, actually, wow, I have been in a religion or almost in a cult, because that's what I grew up in. And it's just these assumptions of viewpoints and perspectives and beliefs that don't even get questioned until suddenly they do. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, it's been a really long and curving path, but I'd say one of the biggest aspects was when I got really sick in 2007. So I was in my
Mm-hmm.
early 30s, and I got what mostly got diagnosed as chronic Lyme disease and chronic fatigue syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
But I was mostly bedridden for almost a decade. Like, I really got taken down. And probably for 10 or 15 years before that, I would have been pretty strongly identified as a Buddhist. I got very involved in in Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. I went to Naropa University, and yeah, pretty deeply connected and committed to daily practice and a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
more mystical, farther in practices. But when I
Mm-hmm.
got sick, I went through a process of finding all of that to fall away. Like, I actually completely turned away from Buddhism, and I had to at some point kind of get rid of all of the different paraphernalia I'd collected, like different statues and Tonka paintings that I had. They just did not resonate. In fact, I just felt like I just need to be cleared from every other person's idea and perspective.
Why?
I think because I was going through this kind of dissolution process, or anything that wasn't
Mhm.
my truest self, I couldn't it wasn't palatable anymore. Like I was so sick. I was so taken down and weak and
Mhm.
couldn't do anything. And it it had this it had this effect that all the accumulation of beliefs and ideas and things I thought were spiritual without really questioning them just started to break down. I couldn't relate to them, I couldn't connect to them,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm trying to follow the thread here, but
It's making me think of this one thing while you
yeah,
think. I'm going to interject. I have a friend who always says, "I don't need a middleman." And that just keeps coming to me while you're talking. Like, I don't need a middleman. I don't need a middleman. And I'm like, yeah, I don't, do we need anyone between us and
yeah,
God?
yeah. That was definitely part of the process for me, and I mean, that's another subject. I think it can be fruitful in certain circumstances to have a middleman if they're really trustworthy, or a middlewoman if they're a truly worked through person who doesn't have or has very little ego left.
Never met one.
Yeah. Yes. And that's another piece of these assumptions. I mean, I got a really deep conditioning from being so deeply in Buddhist world, because there's a lot of devotional practice that is woven in there, and especially in Tibetan Buddhism, you can't be a real student unless you have your teacher. And that was part of what was really breaking down for me when I was sick. Of I had gone through some issues with the teacher that I had been working with a number of years. I was a time when a lot of Tibetan teachers and other teachers and different spiritual practices were being taken down because of sexual assaults or some kind of boundary breaking. So, that, and I've never been a truly devotional person to that kind of lineage. There are people that just love that path. I think partly because of my dad, who was such a free thinker and would never follow any authority. I've always been pretty skeptical about it, but I felt guilty. I was like, oh, I should be devotional and I should be connected and utterly devoted to this teacher. And that was part of what broke down for me. I'm like, no, I can't be. It's not real. And I can only be with what's real. I have so little bandwidth. I have so little capacity left in my physical and emotional systems. Anything that isn't true, anything that I have to mask for, anything that I have to try to be different, I can't do it. I literally don't have the energy. It broke down. Like all of that stuff that I'd been carrying just started to really break down.
So, what did you find to be true that you were able to hold on to at that time?
I'd say it was just the very little direct moments, like seeing the tree outside my window, like feeling the cat lie down next to me, feeling my breath. There just wasn't room for anything extra except for the basic senses, if that makes sense. Like that's kind of all I could find. And yeah, I mean, it was a real long and prolonged dark night of the soul. And often it felt like nothing was there. There was just nothing. The entire universe was gone. There was nothing felt like it was supporting me. There was nothing I felt like I could actually lean into or believe in. I didn't have faith. I didn't have any kind of, oh, I'm going to get through this, because after you're in bed for years on end in total pain and agony, and I would have people come and see me once in a while and they'd say, "Oh, maybe it's your attitude," or maybe like, there's this whole other tangent on chronic illness and how people relate to it, and still try to overlay these kind of new age thought forms on top of it. Like, have you tried this and this and this, or you're going to get better. It's all going to be okay. And that's actually not true. That's actually not true. Many people don't get better at all. And often it's really not okay. So I think just interfacing with that felt true. Like, you know what? It's true that you might not get better. That's what's true. It's true that there's suffering. That's what's true. And it's true that some people suffer forever and there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And that's a very sad kind of dark stance, but it's actually true. Like, I know a lot of people who are super sick, haven't left their house in 15 or 20 years because they can't turn the doorknob. And like, to try to overlay, well, hey, try to feel better, doesn't help. What helps is to be like, that sucks. Like, this sucks. And this is human. And this is a real reality for many people. Like, let's be with that. But that's very, very hard for people.
How did you start to heal?
I mean, I never gave up trying. So it is paradoxical what I'm saying, because even as I was like, this just sucks, I might never get better, I was still trying every Western and alternative treatment that I was able to do within my finances. So there were certain like medical things that slowly helped me get better. And then not really. I mean, I took antibiotics probably for 3 years straight, which actually did have some effect. And then I did a number of different alternative things. But the thing that actually took me a while to realize that helped me get better was craniosacral therapy, which is, I became a craniosacral therapist because of that. And the reason I think it helped was because I did a 3-year training where I was exposed so often to this body work that helped regulate my nervous system, that once that got more ordered and organized, some of the symptoms just started to fall away.
Why do so many of us get sick? And by us, I think that I am trying to capture, myself included, sensitive people who end up on this podcast.
Yeah.
Or not, like some people, it's just a strange through line that so many people that end up exploring non-physical reality also have had unquantifiable illnesses, like mysterious ailments for long periods of time. Is it emotional?
I mean, this is such a huge question.
I'm obviously trying to cover all of existence in this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love this question. And like, I have wanted to start a podcast just talking about this subject, because there's so many people that have different points of view. And it's kind of one of the central themes of my personal life around what is sickness? Why are some people getting these chronic illnesses and some people don't? And I think there's a number, for me, what I've come to, and I do not have the final answer at all, but I've come to that there's a number like of overlapping pieces. I mean, one is broken culture. Like, we don't have tribe. We don't have a culture that holds us. And so in indigenous cultures from conception onward, and this has all been more developed as I've studied the nervous system over the last 15, 20 years, and developmental trauma and pre and perinatal therapy. So like, in indigenous cultures, when a child from conception on, even before conception, there's a holding field. Like, there's something that's happening that is relating to this being as a whole intact being, and a welcoming field that gets created from the first spark of life. And then once they are born out, they like open their eyes to 30 pairs of eyes that are looking upon them with love and welcome, and, at least what I've heard, shamanic knowing and dreaming of why this being came in the first place. So like, they already have a path. We don't have any of that. We haven't had that for many, many generations. We've had the opposite. So there's this huge epigenetic thread of trauma that many of us have carried. And I think for people who aren't highly sensitive, maybe that genetic snip of trauma recollection doesn't get expressed, if that makes sense. So, like, we come in, for me personally, I'll just say, I came into a field of 2 Jewish lineages which carried huge amounts of ancestral trauma. And then my 2 particular parents hadn't worked on their own stuff at all. They reinforced all of these imprints that I came in with in my own system. There was no welcoming. There was all kinds of trauma in the womb from my own exploration back there. So I came in super sensitive with the double whammy of major ancestral trauma and then 2 parents that did not know how to raise a child at all and didn't really even want to. And that creates nervous system wiring from the get-go that affects every part of our development from there on, which makes our physiology just fracture. Like, we don't have order in our system at that point. And I believe it starts at conception. So the whole 9 months in the womb is a time where we are supposed to be ordering and we're supposed to be getting everything foundationally nourished. And if we don't get that, we're at this disadvantage from the get-go. And then you come out of birth and here's another initiation that doesn't get met. And then you have your whole childhood where your needs aren't getting met and your system is developing that whole time. So I think so much of it is based in nervous system and physiology, and that the emotional layer is way up higher. I actually really don't believe that the emotions cause illness. I think it's mostly bottom up and not top down. And they're finding that with polyvagal theory now, that it's like 80 or 90% of the information that our brains are getting are from the bottom up. And so it's our body. And this is something I really learned when I was sick. And no one fucking believed me, because I would say, people would come in and be like, use your mind. It's your emotion. What emotion is it that you're repressing? Blah, blah, blah. And I've done therapy for 35 years. So it's not like I wasn't aware of that level of the story. But what got so clear to me is, no, this is my body. My body's going into reactions, and then these emotions and stories are rising up from that. It's really the physiology at the base. So it feels like it's that cultural piece, it's the nervous system piece, and then there's the piece of we get sick, and there's no context for it in our world. It's like we end up being the failures. We kind of get on the outside once you're sick, because there's so much push to be super well and be super fit and always be happier and better and this and that. And that's all super damaging to our psyche and our physiology. And so if we're sensitive and we're faced with that all the time, that's another component.
It's really heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. But there is also a positive piece there, I just want to say, in that I do feel, and I don't mean this in an overly spiritual way, but I really do think chronic illness is a real initiation, and it's one of the closest things we have to an authentic initiation these days, because we don't have initiation built into our world. The people I know who have gone through serious chronic illness are some of the most deep, genuine, real, humble, spiritual people that I know.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know where I would be without having had those experiences, honestly.
Same.
I wouldn't, sure as shit wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
having this conversation with you, not a chance. Not
Yeah.
a chance.
Yeah.
I want to segue into the Somatic Home,
Okay.
your company. It's weird because somatic technically refers to the physical body, but somatic practices often feel deeply emotional and even spiritual, tapping into stored memory, trauma, nervous system regulation. How do you understand that bridge between the physical and the non-physical there?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they are two sides of one whole. and they've really gotten split, right? The physical and the non-physical, and the external and the internal. And I think that's where a lot of problems are happening, is that intactness has been split, and there's been all of this idea from many different spiritual traditions of ascension, of getting out of the body, of getting out of the material and the physical. And I think through being sick and having to deal so directly with the physical, that was part of it. And it's also that I have a love of the physical world. Like, I find so much beauty in physical object and shape and color and texture and how my senses engage with it. So
Yeah, it's cool.
yeah, it's mind-blowing. It's like a fucking miracle. Like, how can there be so much beauty and interest and uniqueness, and like a nautilus shell and like curly cauliflower? I mean, how can this be? I don't ever get tired of that.
I'm always wondering, like, why are all the spiritual people trying to get out of it all the time?
Exactly. So this whole ascension thing just drives me crazy. It leaves a really bad taste in my mouth because yeah, I think maybe the closest I can get to what I think is that the soul and the body are one. They're one unit. And our body, and just segueing a little into the somatic home, through that, our space that we live within is our soul. It's not just like a facet of our soul. It is like they're one thing.
Hmm. It's interesting because it seems like lately a lot of conversations lead there. Like, ascension is a part of this physical life. Deal with it, in the sense, like, incorporate it and keep going.
Mm.
Emotions are physical entities, and the physiology can be the origin of illness. And it's sort of just like compartmentalizing and separating isn't necessary.
Mhm.
I would love to know your explanation of what the Somatic Home is.
Yeah.
Like, what is this company?
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Pleasure.
It's really a synthesis of a lot of different studies and interests and modalities. I studied interior design way back when, 25 years ago, and I became certified in feng shui. And I really wanted to be an architect. And I actually moved to California in 2001 to become an architect. And a series of things happened that changed my course. So that has kind of fueled my direction for a really long time, like 25 years. But I always wanted, like, I studied interior design and I really loved the design part, but I realized it was actually really boring because there wasn't much soul or spirit mixed into it. And as much as I tried to push that soul spirit part away, like, that's who I am. It really is just who I am at the core. So this started coming together at a certain point, maybe 4 years ago. I actually put this completely aside. I've always been like, someday I want to be a designer in some way and I want to make this my work. But I became a craniosacral therapist and that's been my work. And then life has been really intense. My partner died and all kinds of things have happened in the get-go of it all. So I actually, in a retreat 3 or 4 years ago, was like, I'm just cutting this. I'm not going to do this. This isn't my life. It's not what's going to happen. It's something I've been drawn to. Maybe I'll just do it in my own house. But then I met my partner, Jessica, and we just instantly kind of had this thought that we should do some kind of work together. And we're both herbalists and have some training in ritual and shamanic work. And we were playing for months with like what that could be. And then I started sharing how, well, my dream has always been to do this kind of soul-based design and really like bringing how much space affects our nervous system and how much it affects our psyche. And she had interest in the home too, but in a slightly different way. But the more we started talking, the more, I mean, honestly, it felt like we've been channeling it. And since this is this podcast, I feel like I can say that it has felt and continues to feel that we have just been the recipients of kind of a being of its own self. And we actually call it salt and gold. Salt and gold, the somatic home. And salt and gold is the being. It's the name of this ancient technology that we feel that for some reason we've been honored to have some access to and are hoping to bring it forth into this modern world because it feels like it's timeless information. And really, we couch it a lot in that our space is affecting our nervous system, our inner is affecting our outer is affecting our inner, and we can actually adjust our space. Our home is a place that we have more agency than most places. I don't mean that we have full agency, but we actually can make a lot of choices and they don't have to cost money. They can be, I'm going to move this plant over there. I'm going to move this furniture there. I'm going to get rid of all this clutter or some heirloom that's actually carrying this really heavy vibe in my space without noticing. So a lot of this is about bringing awareness to the nuance of what's happening in our space because our systems, back to the physiology, are picking up the cues of our world constantly. It never stops. That's how we're biologically built. And so when we're in our home, that's also our most habitual space. So we kind of can get these blinders and we just get into our little routines. We don't even notice the clutter in the corner. We don't notice that when we look at that art piece, our chest is contracting. Or when we look out the window, we're actually expanding, or whatever it is for each individual. So a lot of this work is the somatic part. It's a very therapeutic coaching container that we create together so that people can start to feel their somatic sensation directly. Oh, I'm looking at that
Cool.
art piece and I'm tight. Oh, I'm feeling this particular cup, which I love. And it makes me want to take a little bit of an exhale and I smile. And those are things
Mm-hmm.
that we're often just not aware of. And those things have huge impact. That's actually where our nervous system rewires. That's where neuroplasticity happens. So that's
Wow.
one level.
That's really cool because just last week, I was just reorganizing all sorts of stuff over the past couple of months in my house, and it's just like insane because I like relocated a shipping department and like just doing all this big annoying shifting. And so
Yeah.
I was finally putting all of our books back on our bookshelves because I was using them for boxes for shipping for like a year.
Mm.
And as I was taking them out and putting them back, I was like noticing which books made me feel horrible. And there were 100% books that I looked at and was like, ugh, this book is making me feel fucked up.
Yeah.
And I remember texting my husband. I was like, I gotta go through some of the books. Clearly have a thing against some of them. Can you can you address that as like a practitioner of this work? Like what was happening?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like books are a big one because they carry so much energy, actually. And then, so like, this is getting a little bit more into the unseen terrain. So I guess I just want to back up a little and say part of the somatic home, the work that we're doing is really working with both the seen and the unseen. We're really bridging them both and hopefully bringing that unseen into kind of a more normalized, typical way of relating to life. And it's more of an animist viewpoint that everything does have a sentience and an intelligence and an energy field, including books, including cups, including your pen. And that's why, like, you can have a favorite pen and a favorite cup or have these kind of somatic sensations. So books in particular, carry a lot of frequency because there's so much information, energy, story, the author's energy, your relationship to it. So it's a pretty complex field. But that can happen with anything. You could go through your clothes, you could go through your dishes. But I think that that's a lot of what's happening. And I mean, Marie Kondo brought a huge amount of this into the mainstream, right? By being like, what
Mhm.
sparks joy, and just feeling it, not trying to think about why, but getting that moment. So that that is a strand of this work. It's definitely like we're working on a very different level, but we just know. Your body knows. Your body itself, your physiology cannot lie. Only our minds can lie. So when you are touching that book and you're like, ugh, that's your body being like, I don't fucking want this. I don't want this in my
Yeah.
space. And then your mind can think, well, it's just a book. What difference does it make? I'm going to put it back on the shelf and it's fine. And you'll stop looking at it after a while. You won't even notice it's there. But your body is actually still registering all that little stuff. And over time, if your house is full of 100 or 500 things that you're kind of like, ugh, but you're not really noticing consciously, you're going to come home and you're going to start having this drain instead of coming home from the busy world, or maybe you work at home. Instead of having a sense of this being my refuge, my sanctuary, and this intentional, beautiful space that I've created in line with my own aesthetic and my own energy and what I want and my priorities, there's these little tiny holes that start happening in our being, because there's the book, there's the thing out of place, there's that clutter over there's that thing that I've inherited that I've had for 20 years that I don't like, and it pulls. And instead of coming home and being resourced, you come home and you disperse. And I think it's
Yeah.
really common for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to go finish that job.
Yeah,
Um,
I can
all right.
help
Will
you.
you just, okay. Will you describe your consultation process with a new client? And then I
Sure.
also want to ask details about your offerings.
Yeah, great. Um, so we have a few different ways that we go. We are teaching classes, but for a one-on-one consultation, one thing is Jessica and I always work together as a team. So we don't split things up. We have discovered that there's something really potent about having two different people holding a container for you. And in our
Mm,
culture, we're so used to, if we work in therapy or work with in other contexts like that, it's usually just one-on-one. But having
mm-hmm.
two creates a field for the nervous system that I find is actually rewiring some of our early attachment, like back to that sense of us not having
Mm,
a tribe or not having an intact family. For many of us, having two people creates a bit of a sense of good, healthy parents. Almost, there's this sense of ground where there's these two perspectives, two energies, and the whole becomes more than the sum of its parts. So that's one piece that comes into all of our work. And when we have a new client, we always start with a first basic assessment. So we'll look around a person's space through the camera. We do most of the work on Zoom, and ask a number of questions on every level: nervous system, history, ancestral, health, relationship, what's really being longed for right now, what the deep soul values and priorities are. And then when we get the visual of the space, we can start to see what's out of alignment just from that. And then from there, um, we offer a couple of different packages because we feel that this work is most potent when you follow up for a while. So we offer like a 3 session and a 6 session. And I feel like that's really the minimum, because it's the same as like if you go to a therapist and you go and do the
yeah.
initial consult and you just get the history out, then what? Like this is actually a lifetime practice as we see it. This is something that it's not a one and done, it's not a quick transformational life hack.
Mm-hmm.
It's an actual reworking of your home space, how you tend your home space, and your daily rhythm and habits and way that you work with your life, and how you connect with the earth as well, and the seasons and your family. And so it's very multifaceted. So in that first session, it's an assessment. After that, we curate it to the person's individual needs. And we have a few different primary lenses. We have the nervous system lens, We have the more psyche, archetypal, unseen world energetic lens. We have the relationship lens, which can be with other humans or with non-human kind of relationship. And we bring in this mythic piece too, which is really important. We bring in both archetypal story that might resonate for people and work with our own stories and energies. So there's again this kind of oracular, unseen animist mythic piece. So depending
Mm-hmm.
on what a person needs, where they're at, we might focus through one of those to start working directly with the space.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of life changes have you seen with your clients as a result of your work with them?
Yeah. So one sticks out right away. This young woman who was a poet, and she had just moved into this new apartment. And we did a session with her. And in the middle of the session, she got kind of stuck because she was having all of these feelings come up just around her being a poet and not being able to express. And she showed us this area that she thought was really important to make kind of more public for friends coming over, as a space that she would share with her friends coming over. And it came to both me and Jess like, no, that's your poet's nook. Like, that's your area. And we shared that with her, and she lit up, and it shifted her in this whole different direction. So after the session, she reworked that area, which was this awesome little window seat. And she made it into, for one, she was like, I didn't realize I could make my home however I wanted. Like, I thought I had to do it this certain way so that when people came over, they experienced something. It was the first time she was living alone. So afterwards, she let us know that, one, she had completely reworked this inner relationship with herself around being a poet because she claimed this space for herself. Another little piece in that same session is we worked with some relationship stuff. And she said that that week she was asked on a date for the first time in a year. And she had really intentionally worked that in this space. So that's one example that comes to mind.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sort of addressing the home as the seat of one's life.
That's exactly. I Something that we've been saying is like, there's many ways to climb the mountain, right? Like, so many different spiritual paths say it's like there's the one destination. And we're just using home as our way in. It's like the center of the wheel for us in order to bring all these different spokes of life in, because home is where we all live. Almost every, I'm not saying there's the whole homeless issue too. And there is, I want to be clear, home can be your van, home can be a tent in the woods, home can be wherever it is. It's not about having a rich life or living in a mansion, like, but we all long for home. We all long for home. And we've lost touch with the importance of it. And we feel like that's part of this kind of revolutionary return is home is right here. We have access. This can actually shift our nervous system. It can shift our well-being. It can shift our sense of belonging and bring more fulfillment. Like, it's actually really fun to play around with space as an art project in itself, and as a way to express yourself, and as a way to um, almost have this oracle in your space, like a set of tarot cards. You can read your space that same way too. Like, oh, like, once you start dropping into it, like, why is that arrangement over there having this effect? And you can dig into it in that same way of interpreting a dream or working with a divination tool.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot
Okay.
as if this whole conversation hasn't been just that already. So, I mentioned earlier that I have moved a bunch of stuff around. Um we have like two small bedrooms, and both of my children shared a bunk bed in one of them. And I was taking up this the only other space upstairs in our house for the shipping department. So I decided to consolidate it, move the shipping department into one small room, and then put them into a bigger bedroom. And I'm realizing as we're talking, ever since I did that, even though there seems to be more space and things are consolidated and more organized, our home life is notably more chaotic.
Interesting.
Specifically for one kid.
Mm.
And I'm like, and to give you the full picture, my husband is building them a bunk bed, but broke his hand right when he started. So they're sleeping on mattresses on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like you don't have to be a genius to figure out that that might be problematic, but it's
Mm.
really actually stressing me out.
Yeah.
Just like seeing it.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on this situation?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts coming. The first one, just because we ended on that note of that it's stressing you out. How old are your kids?
7 and 10.
Okay. So, as the parent, your nervous system is always going to be affecting them, as I'm sure you know. So, just on one level, your stress and feeling the extra chaos or the weirdness of the beds is going to have an effect on the field. I'm not trying to blame you or say you're doing it wrong, but that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the other thing that comes to mind is like, this is a really, really good nuance is it's not just about organization. It's not just about the amount of space. It's not just about having things clean. In fact,
Yeah.
all of those things can go against the life force that we're looking for. That's why I actually think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these modalities, these organization modalities that have become very trendy are often a setup for failure for people because you get really into
Yeah.
it and there's kind of an overlying pressure of, well, if you can't keep it organized or minimal or whatever the trend is, then you're failing. Like, what's wrong with me? I can't even keep my house together. And that's just
Yeah.
bullshit. Like we all have a different quality and aesthetic and feeling that makes us feel at home and feel safe
Mm-hmm.
and feel regulated. For some people,
Yeah.
that's a lot of stuff. For some people, it's no stuff. For some people, it's tons of color. For some people, it's all neutral, all of the different components. So, my
Yeah.
thought is that there are some unseen factors going on, probably for your kids. It could be
Me
the
too.
move itself. It could be that there's we haven't even talked about the more subtle energetics that can be in your house and the spirit of your house. And maybe that room has a little bit of gook in it that needs more of a ritualistic cleansing or
Mm-hmm.
attention. It could be that it's hard to move space even if you're in the same house. And maybe it's just they need a little bit more communication or sovereignty in creating some different things in that new room, like a fort or
Yeah.
something that they physically engage with themselves so they feel like they have some ownership over it. So those are some of my first thoughts. If you showed me the space and we like spent a little bit more time digging into, that would be really fun, but I would have more come
Yeah.
through that way, but that's what comes to me at first is there's other levels at play, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm excited about this modality because it's not just interior design, it's not just organizing and cleaning, and it's not just therapy, but it blends all of this so we can actually get to the root of why is that happening? Like
Yeah.
we could actually figure that out and play with some different things. And my guess is it might take a couple different tries and playing around, but at some
Yeah.
point the thing would click in and you wouldn't be experiencing that chaos.
So, is part of your work picking up on energies?
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of your experience when evaluating a home? You can be like,
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'll just say straight out, like, Jessica and I are both oracular people. Like, we pick up on energies. We're highly sensitive, both of us. And through working with a business coach, we kind of have had to make our articulation of what we do a little bit more clear cut, because there were so
mhm.
many pieces. So we were having a hard time getting it across. Like, so what is this?
Yeah,
So that's a little bit more in the background, but it's just part of the scope. When we're working with a client, we're reading their own nervous system. We're learning what's going on in their interior as much as their exterior, and also picking up those cues or those intuitions of like, what's going on in that corner, or what's the history of the house. Like, we
totally.
just worked with a client the other day and found out that there had been this redwood fairy circle that got cut down under her house in order to build the foundation, and she was really aware of it. So we did a process of her actually talking to those redwoods and dropping down into the earth and making some different offerings, and kind of a ritual on the spot, that by the end of it, we'll see how it unfolds for her. But by the end of it, even then, she was like, wow, I actually feel a little bit more settled in my space for the first time, because I related to this injury that had happened to these amazing tree beings so this house could be here.
Holy
So yeah,
cow,
that
that's
kind of stuff comes
wild.
up all the time. Yeah, that's really, it's really one of the heart pieces of the work, is working with that unseen terrain. And yeah. And it depends on the person, of course.
Well, I think that it would be unfair of me to not share that my 7-year-old did tell me that when he was a baby in that room, there was a being
Mm,
that stood outside of the door all night, and it
wow.
scared him, and he couldn't tell me because he couldn't talk, and he could see its feet under the door, and I was listening to him, and I'm like, oh god. And I'm like, well, it was probably just me listening at the door. And he was like, no, it was there all night. And the first time he told me that was kind of, it was years ago, but he was finally old enough to communicate it. And
Yeah.
then when we moved them into that room, he's like, I don't want to be here because of this. And I was like, oh shit.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really important component for sure. So he's totally aware of that. Yeah. He both remembers it. So is that energy still there? It's hard to say, but either way, he's being affected by that, in my point of view. So that's probably where we
Yeah.
would start with tending to the situation, and probably bring him into it, because having him find his own kind of power there with your support, or with both you and your husband's support, um,
Yeah.
that could be really a really strengthening opportunity, actually, to be like, hey, spirit entity, whatever we want to frame that as, find out what it wants or needs, and like move it along. I'd be really
Yeah.
curious to see what happened if you worked with that.
Yeah, we definitely will. The fact that I'm talking about it and haven't done that yet, to me, is I'm like
Right.
shocked. Like, what? Like, how
Well,
have you not done something ritualistic
yes.
with him?
It's another thing I'm really finding with clients, is that it's obvious when it comes out, but when we need other people to hold the container for us, for that obvious thing to rise up and be like, "Oh, I know. I know. I've been busy. I Whatever the reasons are, like, it's the same again as working with a therapist, in that it's really hard for us to do this work by ourselves. And even like Jess and I will take turns helping each other with our own houses, because I'll struggle with my own space. I'll be like, there's something off, but I can't do it because it's too entrenched in my own being. So having that reflection and having the container held by another regulated being is a huge
Yeah.
piece.
what kinds of patterns or blocks do you see show up most often in people's homes?
Hmm.
And do they reflect something about a person's inner state?
I think your home is always reflecting your inner state. Different aspects of it, some larger, some smaller. Obviously, like, having just unseen areas that just don't get noticed, and clutter and accumulation is one of the bigger patterns that we come across. Um, and again, I feel like there needs to be room for some chaos in everybody's home. Like, that's an energy that's just true in the universe, and the idea that every single piece should be perfectly organized and clean, to me, isn't realistic. So I always have a closet that is kind of where I shove all the stuff, and then every so often I clear it all out when it feels right. But it's not about
Yep.
that. But it is about having some intentionality and consciousness about that and being like, you know what? I know I am putting stuff in this closet that I can't deal with right now, but I will at some point. But what we see often is that that's spread out everywhere, and it's spread out into places that you're trying to rest and relax. Like in your bedroom, often we're finding lots of electronic equipment or lots of paperwork or lots of your children's toys stacked up. Or, any number of things that will accumulate, which is not in alignment with what the bedroom ought to be for your wholeness, right? So that's just one example of what we find. Another thing that's really been coming up is people not quite feeling at home in their home. Like they kind of
Mm.
love their home. We just worked with a client who has this gorgeous house in the Bay Area, and she loves it aesthetically. She feels really lucky to live there, but she's not able to fully settle into it because it almost feels too nice for her. And so it's bringing up this kind of valuing and worthiness. And like in her words, she feels like it's too grown up for her and she doesn't know how to stand in those shoes. And so through our process, we really were titrating back and forth of the psyche part of, okay, you're like actually shedding a skin and moving into this new phase of life. And this is actually something to step into. It's a little outside the comfort zone. It's more than you are used to. But there's this sense of like not knowing how to be home at home, even if you love it. So that's a huge pattern we work
God,
with to
there's
just kind of
so much
unveil.
there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And then it's like it reflects,
Crazy.
do I feel at home in my own skin, in my body, on the land? Do I have a support system? So it reflects on a lot of different levels.
Oh my God. Well, geez, Louise, I could discuss this all day, but I think we do need to wind it down. Because there's just like so much there. I'm now thinking about God, our our we associate home with where we developed all of our traumas or positive attributes or you know experiences with love or shock or anything formative is associated with home. So in a way it is just like a door
Yeah.
into a whole being.
Yes. That's
It's
exactly what
crazy.
we say. I mean, that's why it's kind of this infinite landscape, and it's the central part of a wheel with so many spokes, and to us it's kind of like, I don't quite want to call it our spiritual path, but it's a path of lifestyle. It's a path of how to live in home, in our bodies, on the earth, in relationship. And home is the anchor point. It's the organization, it's the orientation, the actual space for how to enter into this vast landscape of our being. And we do also work with people through different meditation practices, going back into your childhood home, going back into a lot of these formative aspects of why our home is the way it is and why we feel the way we do in our current homes and the themes of different homes we lived in. I mean, there's so many different approaches.
Yeah,
I find
geez.
it endlessly fascinating. I personally just completely love it. And I also think that, I find if I'm feeling stagnant and something's just so stuck, I'll suddenly feel like I need to just shift the furniture in my living room. And if I do that, something changes. Something changes. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can be small and sometimes it can be quite big.
Hmm. Okay, so this is my last question
Okay.
for today, but
Okay.
I know how you're going to answer this because as a child, you found home amongst trees that took you in. But do you believe it's possible to feel at home without owning a home or even staying in one place? And how do
Mhm.
you support people who are moving
Yeah.
or traveling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's a spectrum. Because my answer is yes, I do. I do think we can feel at home even when we don't own a home, certainly. And even when we're moving around more. I think it takes more practice and more resilience and resource if we're moving around to really feel at home because that home has to be totally rooted in our own system and we don't have as much reliability and safety net and external like safe other of a home that you're in every day. But I think that there are ways that you can work with that. And like for me, I use little objects and talismans. When I go traveling, even for the weekend, I bring a few little things from my home, like whether it's a rock or my favorite cup, something that ties me into my larger archetype of home that I can feel. I go to a hotel room and I put it out so that there's some connection, some thread that keeps me. And I've been a gypsy. I until I was 35, I never lived anywhere for more than a year,
Wow.
and that was a struggle. So I do think that it's easier when you're rooted in a place to really feel at home and to really build the inner resource. But I think once you're able to build that inner resource, and some people are different, right? Some people can feel at home anywhere because they had the nurturing they needed and their bodies do feel like home. I think for many of us who are super sensitive and have dealt with illness and have struggled with feeling at home in our body and have struggled with feeling at home on the earth and in this time frame, feeling like we actually belong on a different planet. Um, it takes
Yeah.
more to build that foundation, and our home can really, really support that for us. And that's why we work a lot with super sensitive people, a lot with people who are ill. Um, that's kind of those are our people because that's who we are.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been amazing. I could talk to you all day, but I
Me
know
too.
you
It's
have
so fun.
to carry on. Thank you so much. This has been really enlightening, and I
Ew.
love this discussion.
Thank you so much too. And I would love to work with you in your home if you ever want to. And we do have a couple classes coming up this week if anybody wants to join.
Okay, cool. Tell us about the classes.
So we have a free intro class on Thursday, July 24th. And that's just
Okay.
us really sharing about this work, and anyone's invited to that. And then on this Saturday, the 26th, we're having a 3-hour class that's going to dive deeper into the work. It's very experiential. We'll be working with the nervous system, with our own spaces, and a specific area in our homes that we can actually have some play with and notice the results from that. So I think that's going to be a really fun class.
Incredible. Okay, well, I will put the link
Great.
in the show notes and you can expect to see some getting psychic people there.
I hope to see some getting psychic people there. It would be great.
Cool.
Thank you. So
Thanks, Nicteha.
thank you so much. It's really been fun to be here. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. Be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. If you like today's episode, please consider leaving a review to help the other psychics find their way here.